Hello again, everyone. Edwin Leonard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about, in my opinion, what I think the least dangerous zodiac sign is. And yes, this does apply and pertain to the sun, moon, and ascendant. Anyway, people, well, first thing off I want to get is, many of you may remember that I did a video some time ago talking about what I thought was the most dangerous zodiac sign, and I am talking about, of course, factoring in not just the sun, but the moon and ascendant. When the FBI, I mean, a lot of people see the FBI lists online, but they're only talking about the sun sign for obvious reasons, because obviously when they're compiling or allocating data or what have you, they're not gonna look up the person's moon and ascendant, because obviously that's not of any significance to them. I respect and understand that. But those lists are very superficial, and the studies on that are superficial because of that. And just because just because on statistical data, one sun sign is apprehended more or what have you, and one is apprehended less than the other 11 zodiac signs, that doesn't really say that much in terms of which signs are the most or least dangerous, because, as I stated before, they're not looking at the moon and ascendant sign. Also, coupled with the fact that a number of those people, that when they're looking up their sun sign, if somebody's on the cusp of one sign or another, they might actually be accidentally putting in the sign that's really adjacent to the sign they are. I mean, let's say, for example, somebody's dated July 22nd. They might put it in as Cancer. In some cases, the person might be a Cancer born on July 22nd, but I think in some cases, like if it's like real late at night, or for example, later in the day, they might actually be a Leo. So I think it depends also on what intervals they're using for each zodiac sun sign, and date, and as far as the dates go for each sign, because a lot of people may use, for example, someone may just use just a general like a range. Like, for example, for Taurus, somebody might say, okay, one person might have April 20th to May 20th. Another person might have April 20th to May 21st or something. So that's why they might be skewed a little, that data. So anyway, well, I'm going to talk about different signs, and I will tell you what I think is the least dangerous zodiac sign. Well, the first one, going in order now, Aries. I would have a lot of trouble putting them as the least dangerous zodiac sign. Aries is ruled by Mars. Aries can have a rather acrimonious and combative nature. They could be very easily provoked. I think it may very well be the most volatile and violent of the zodiac signs. I mean, don't get me wrong. Aries is not vindictive or vengeful. They don't hold a grudge. They forgive and forget quickly, but they can become incensed very quickly. And sometimes what I see is that they could be guilty of inadvertent violence. And I'll elaborate on that when I say that. I mean, they don't, it's a lot of their, if they can have a lot of angry crimes, I believe, like battery and aggravated or whatever, aggravated assault. They have these things, and they're not, a lot of them are not premeditated or planned, and they just lose their temper, and it becomes a strong, violent action against them as far as a crime goes. So Aries certainly is not the least dangerous zodiac sign. Now, getting to Taurus. Well, Taurus certainly can be a sign that could be a candidate for the least dangerous zodiac sign. Now, Taurus is very docile and passive. They're very gentle. They are ruled by Venus, and they're certainly not a nature you would think would be equated with being acerbic or really looking for problems, and that could be criminal activity. However, the thing about Taurus, though, is, here's the thing. They can reach, after reaching their point of endurance, whether it's from persistent goading or baiting or what have you, constant berating, belittling, they can really be very infuriated, and they could really explode and go ballistic. So I don't think they're quite the least dangerous zodiac signs. They're one of the least dangerous zodiac signs. I think there were some lists online that had Taurus as like one of the most dangerous, but of course, as I stated before, they're just going by the sun sign anyway, as far as that goes. Now Gemini, we'll talk about them. This is a sign, I mean, according to a number of those websites that we're talking about, the FBI's list or what have you, of the most dangerous. They had Gemini, if I remember right, it's the least dangerous number of those lists. Now, here's the thing, and as I stated before, they're just talking about the sun sign. So, but getting to Gemini, Gemini is very mercurial. They could sometimes, I mean, they could turn on someone maybe more than any of the other signs. In some case, I mean, there may actually be literal duality in some isolated cases. They're also very excitable and highly strung. And Geminis, the thing about them too is, and if you even want to just go to isolate the Sun and Gemini thing, in that they're not, well, you know, the list say, you know, Gemini's the least apprehended, least dangerous or whatever. Well, remember that Gemini is a sign that's very shrewd and cunning. They're very streetwise. They often are one step ahead of law enforcement. They really know how to outmaneuver people, and they're so cunning and streetwise, and they do think, and they move. Their mind and body often moves faster than most. So factor that into the equation. And I mean, here's an example for you. You look at this one example. Now, this is speculation, but a lot of people are very suspicious that the person that was the infamous Jack the Ripper was Aaron Kosminski. It would not shock me if he actually was, because, I mean, here's get a list. Aaron Kosminski had a Gemini moon and ascendant. And Gemini is a sign that could outmaneuver the best of them, and they could be very slick. They can do things in a way so fast. I mean, by the time you figure out even sometimes the crime that they committed, I mean, they could be miles away. So really, and it would not surprise me. I don't know this for a fact. I don't know if there's irrefutable evidence on this or not, but I would be strongly suspicious that he could very well have been Jack the Ripper. And don't forget, people, that there's a number of other people that have Gemini prominent in their chart. I mean, that have been notorious. I mean, even serial killers. You look at Jeffrey Dahmer's sun in Gemini. The son of Sam was a sun in Gemini. He had that surreptitious Scorpio rising. So he had really that kind of combination, which made him very elusive and really difficult to apprehend. So anyway, the next sign. I don't think Gemini is the least dangerous zodiac sign. Now, the next sign, talking about Cancer. Well, Cancer, as many of you may know, has been listed on that FBI list on many websites as the most dangerous zodiac sign. They're certainly not the least. I don't really see them as the most dangerous, but as far as being the least, Cancer, I mean, we know I really don't see them as that. Cancer can be very temperamental and changeable. They're similar to Gemini, but it's more connected with the emotions as opposed to Gemini. You look at Cancer, that I think a lot of the thing about them is that it's because of their strong emotional responses to things. I think Cancer is a sign I could see them being involved in a lot of domestic situations and volatile actions on the home front and doing things to property, and they just they can really be like a Cancer. I have to admit, I mean, I have a sun Cancer. I think Cancer can sometimes be like a loose cannon, as much as I don't want to say anything derisive or negative about my own sun sign. I do see how it would be hard to put them as the least dangerous zodiac sign, including factoring the sun, moon, and ascendant. So I don't see them as being that. Now, the next sign I want to talk about, Leo. Well, Leo is certainly a sign, I think, that can qualify as one of the more dangerous ones as opposed to least dangerous. I mean, don't get me wrong, Leo has a lot of good qualities. They could be very magnanimous, very generous. They're very kind, and they're often about reciprocating people that help them out. But, I mean, they can have that legendary temper. I think a lot of Leo's issues in terms of a crime they commit, it could be because over excessive pride and maybe being shown up. This is a sign, like Aries can have an explosive temper, except that Aries is more easily provoked, I believe, than Leo. I think it takes Leo a little bit more to really reach that boiling point, but when they do, I mean, their fury can be very, very powerful, to say the least. And anyway, So I don't see them as the least dangerous zodiac sign. Now, the next sign I want to talk about is Virgo. Now, Virgo certainly is a sign that could qualify as the least dangerous zodiac sign, but I don't think it makes the cut. I mean, don't get me wrong, Virgo is often, very scrupulous, ethical, and upright. They're not the one sign you would really correspond with that kind of, criminal activity. But in some cases, when Virgo is strong, energy is strongly afflicted and very negative manifestation, that the scrupulous side could be somewhat of a front for them to be able to get things over on others and commit crimes undetected. What makes Virgo somewhat dangerous is the fact that, too, they're very meticulous. They often, if they're going to plan, Virgo being an earth sign could be strongly about premeditation. They're the kind of people that can go into a store. They will scope the store out. They'll look and see where all the security cameras are. They'll memorize it. They'll have their little schematic ready, and they'll go in and do what they have to do when they're ready to do it. Virgo also can be, you figure they're about health, so I think crimes they could commit can be ones that making others unhealthy, such as poisoning others and doing things to make, maybe somebody in an unhealthy state. So really, and remember, they are immutable signs, so even though Virgos can have steady natures, being an earth sign, there still could be somewhat of a really instability, given that they are mutable sign. Many of you may remember the weepy voice killer. I forgot his name, but he had a Virgo sun. His sun sign was in Virgo. So, and he also, likely, depending on time of birth, had a Gemini moon, and that obviously probably wasn't helping matters either. Probably, I'm sure, I don't remember 100%, but I'm sure those energies were probably afflicted to some degree in his chart. Anyway, next thing up. Talking about Scorpio. Well, Scorpio can actually be one of the more dangerous signs, as many of you probably figure. They are very sneaky and surreptitious, and you have that vindictive and vengeful nature connected with them. The son of Sam has Scorpio rising. They could be quintessential manipulators. Scorpio, the reason, if you want to go by if you were even to go just by sun signs, probably the reason that Scorpio is not, at the top of the list like Cancer is because Scorpio is so sneaky and surreptitious. They do things without really leaving much trace evidence. The thing that they're similar to Virgo, I think, in that sense, but Virgo is more about knowing what to clean. They're more proficient in terms of cleaning up. Virgo, the crime scene. Scorpio is really one that they could do things in a very quick-witted manner and very stealth-like, and do it fast. I think they and do it quietly, and they just don't really leave. They're not the ones that are going to just generally leave the evidence to even have to clean up necessarily as much. So anyway, and so I don't really see Scorpio as the least dangerous zodiac sign. They're actually one of the most, I believe. Next up, well, Sagittarius can qualify as one of the least dangerous zodiac signs. They're ruled by Jupiter. They're very benign and benevolent. They're about philanthropy. But keep in mind, it's not just because it's a mutable sign, but you look at it, the fact that they are ruled by Jupiter. So when they do commit any crimes, it could be on a very prodigious scale. And anything Sagittarius does, at least most things they do, is going to be on a large scale, and that could be criminal activity as well. If they're going to make a heist, it's going to be a very large one generally. It's not going to be some petty theft. So for me, I don't put Sagittarius as the least dangerous zodiac sign. Next up, well, Capricorn. Looking at Capricorn, to me, would not qualify. They're not the least dangerous zodiac sign, because Capricorn, in a very negative manifestation, could be cold, calculating, maybe even ruthless, and show little mercy on someone that they may be committing a crime against, because they could be very undemonstrative, callous, and very cold, and they don't really, they could do things without a lot of feeling or remorse. So that in that respect right there, they can be. And I think Capricorn can often be connected with very large, like they do like business type crimes. Capricorn is a sign I see associated with businesses, and I think they could be one of the ones that can maybe take from perhaps from their own somehow and do crimes associated with it. So anyway. Well, next up, I don't think the least dangerous sign is Aquarius, because Aquarius, okay, they could be somewhat erratic, sporadic, and unpredictable. Aquarius being as ingenious as they are, they can often use that ingenuity to maybe commit some really high-tech crimes. I mean, Aquarius is really, I see them as really committing, like hacking into computers and really maybe into large computer-like databases. Their crimes could be very serious. And I mean, Aquarius, as I stated before, they're about unpredictability. They can be very extemporaneous. They're not really much about planning ahead, and sometimes they don't even know what they're going to do in certain situations right away. And I mean, it's just because of that unpredictable temperament of them. I think that to me tells me I don't see them as being the least dangerous zodiac sign. Now, going to Pisces, well, I mean, you see Pisces, I mean, they're certainly not the most dangerous zodiac sign. Pisces could actually, some people want to make their argument they could be the least, one of the least, or at least one of the least dangerous zodiac signs. I think they're somewhere, at least in the middle, because what makes Pisces actually, there's some things that makes them dangerous is because they have the, of all the signs, I see them as having the greatest propensity for drugs and alcohol. And of course, that could, rule out inhibitions. You lose your inhibitions and you could act in a recalcitrant manner when you're on doing something like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, Pisces is often very submissive and passive and docile, but they also can be very impressionable, and if they're with the wrong crowd, if they're with nefarious and criminal-minded people, then their behavior may replicate those people, and they could get themselves into trouble and wind up being somewhat dangerous. So, in any way, the thing too is, and they could also be connected with crimes that are associated not just with taking drugs or DUIs or driving under the influence or driving while intoxicated. They could also be ones that could be pushing drugs and a lot. And I think that's kind of what makes them somewhat dangerous in a way as well. Well, finally, I'm going to get to the sign I think is the least dangerous zodiac sign, and that is the zodiac sign Libra. Libra is really they're the most balanced, even temperament. They have about even temperament. They're associated with the law, and they often want justice. And it's a sign that often abhors injustice. They want to uphold the law. They're also ruled by Venus, and they strive often for peace and tranquility. And they may work very hard and laboriously to find that peace in their life. And I think too, you have to keep in mind I think they understand, a lot of Libras, that committing a crime may cause a lack of peace with themselves, and if they commit a crime, they're in a situation where they're somewhat not at peace. Because I mean, they're going to be worried, well, is this person going to apprehend me? And they don't want to be in that mindset. So I think you look at it well. Also, some of you may wonder, well, why couldn't I have chosen Taurus? Because Taurus is also ruled by Venus. Well, for the part of it, because the reasons I stated earlier in the video, coupled with the fact that despite Taurus wanting peace and tranquility, they also, Taurus, keep in mind, is a feminine sign, so they're going to be a little bit more subjective than Libra, because Libra is a masculine sign. Taurus, remember, in many cases in a solar or natal chart, the zodiac sign Cancer will fall on the third house cusp. So rational thinking may not always be there with Taurus as much as one would think. I mean, Taurus is often very calm, placid, sometimes downright unflappable, but there are times too when those emotions can cloud their rational mind, and they could be surprisingly sensitive to what others say, especially ridicule and criticism, though they may not show it, especially if Taurus is rising, because that's the astrological mask and facade. So, and also Taurus decisions, I think because of this, can sometimes be based on their mood with little regard for potential repercussions, often tied in with the obstinate nature of the sign as well. And I think sadly with Taurus, and I have Taurus rising as many of you may know, I'll even be one to say that sometimes the stubbornness can override handling things in the rational or logical manner. And so anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for what I believe is the least dangerous zodiac sign. Stay tuned next time where I will be talking about the zodiac sign Cancer celebrities. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person astrologically speaking based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.